ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Cropper here. I have a very firm belief that productivity makes a person feel good about themselves and improves their self-esteem. Being productive. The more productive they are, I think the better they feel about themselves. But they don't always. It's hard work to be productive. So here's the situation. We've got laws that prevent people from being productive until they turn, 14 or 16 or 18, depending on how many hours a week and what industry you want to work in and so on. Child labor is prevented. Now, John Stuart Mill, I believe, wrote an essay submitted to Parliament about what he believed they should do with the kids in the poorhouses and stuff. They had all these kids who couldn't afford school, weren't going to school, living on the street, no shoes, homeless, and the government has soup kitchens and stuff they're making for them. And he says, I think that what we should do is take every kid who's over 5 years old and have him earn his keep. So we'll have government factories set up to make different things. The 5-year-olds can work the machines and keep track of them and, all that stuff. 5 years old. That's how poor society was back then. An adult male couldn't make much more than enough to feed himself. Kids had to put in a little bit of work to earn their calories. Amazing how poverty-stricken was society back then. So I don't think that we need to bring back child labor to feed anybody, but I do think we should look into bringing back child labor to help mature the kids. A lot of them end up living at home when they're 25 or 30 years old. Back in the 1950s, you move out when you're 18 or 20, and that was the narrative. Now the narrative is go to college, drop out of college, move back home for a few years. Maybe it was as common back then as it is now, but I'm hearing that the age of kids living at home is going up and up and up. It used to be 18, 19, 20, and now it's 25, 26, something like that. Now in Utah, by the way, where I live, it is still considered bad form to not be married by the time you're 20 and have kids on the way. I think they choose 20 because young men go on a mission when they're 18 and they're back when they're about 20. The girls are generally supposed to be married when they're about 18 or 19 and have a kid on the way. That's just, everybody knows that's how you're supposed to do it in Utah. We're stuck in the 1800s. Crazy. I lived in Connecticut, and it's absolutely, you were considered a failure if you were married before you were 25. A failure. What are you getting married so early for? What are you, a Mormon or something? You're from Utah? Different sides of the world. Anyways, back to child labor, shall we? We don't need to feed the kids. We're productive enough to get along fine. To help the kids mature, to help them possibly get out of the house sooner, to help them develop their mind, because your intelligence and your thinking, your abstract thinking, is strengthened by having the ability to reason well with things in physical reality. I believe that. I believe that from personal experience and from seeing people who don't have experience. For example, a lot of people are very careful driving their cars on the street. They don't want to scrape their car against someone else, and sometimes they won't even pass. If they've got 4 or 5 feet in there, they'll stop and wait. Like they have huge, giant turning saw blades at the corners of their car. They're going to cut into other cars or something. They don't know how far out their car goes. Well, I learned when I was working on a farm as a kid that tractor tire can come really close to a bale of hay or to a post. And sometimes you need every last inch, and sometimes you have to push the tire against a bale, and maybe the bale moves a bit or something, but at least you didn't have to get out of the tractor and rearrange or whatever. There's always these considerations to be made when you're farming. So when I get on the roads and I see people who don't know how to get around other cars or can't go between a car and a curb because there's only an extra 19 feet of space and stuff, and so they sit there acting like they're stupid, and I think maybe they are kind of stupid because they didn't drive a tractor when they were 9. So I think that being able to think logically and being a reasonable person, part of it has its roots in having some experience in the real world. And I think that we should maybe look at ways to give kids experience in the real world. I think that possibly we should look at ways, it doesn't even have to be money-making. I think it should be money-making, self-supportive, profitable in some sense. But imagine if we did put costs in, if you had to pay tuition to get your kid into a factory that produced stuff, and the kid learns some production method or whatever. Let's say it produces toy glider airplanes you sell to local stores, whatever. Or it produces pool tables or something, and the kid's got a job and he feels proud of being part of what ends up being an end product and so on. And let's say you actually had to pay tuition. You didn't get he didn't get a paycheck from it. You actually had to pay for this privilege. Maybe that's the way we should go with it too. But I say bring back child labor. That's what I say. Bring it back for the good of the children.